Hey everyone, it's Ilonia here. A lot of you have asked for a Blender guide. Sorry this took a while to get out, but I do hope that um, this guide here is able to help quite a few of you. So with that being said, I wanted to kind of like go ahead and sorry, I'm trying to get my audio level set here. There we go. With that being said, I want to kind of go ahead and give a crash course in Blender, things that I know, things that I can teach. Hopefully this video can be helpful. I will try and go as in-depth as possible. I try to explain things in a way that hopefully makes sense. If they don't, I apologize. Feel free to message me if something doesn't make sense in the video. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start. So, for those of you that don't know even where to obtain Blender, go to Steam. On Steam, just type in Blender like you're searching for a game. It's free, go ahead and install it. You're gonna have the most recent version of Blender. When you first open up Blender, you're gonna get a scene like this presented to you. This scene contains a camera, a cube, and a light. We will go over these at some point, but for right now, we don't need to. The first thing that we're going to want to do when we open up Blender, and this is for your benefit, and trust me, you will want to go ahead and do this, is go to your edit menu in the upper left hand corner, click on preferences. At the very bottom, you're going to go down to this little tab called system, and under memory and limits here, you'll see how there's these little drop down menus. Memory and limits, we want to up our undo steps to the max of 256. By default, it is set to 32, and you will quickly run out of undo steps if you do not set this to 256. Just make sure this is checked to do global undo, and then you can see here. If you plan to do renders in the future, make sure you go over to optics and make sure that you set your optics to your actual graphics card. That will allow you to render scenes using your graphics card and not using your processor. So, getting started in Blender, let's go ahead and teach a few of the basics of how to move around a Blender scene. If you hold your middle mouse button, that is how you pan and rotate around an origin point. If you hold shift while clicking your middle mouse button, that is how you actually drag the camera around the space. And so you can kind of get an idea of how to move. That zooming, that's also just your scroll wheel. If you hold down left click, you'll get a box select, like you're gonna select something on a web page. Right clicking will bring up menus and so on and so forth. There's a few hotkeys that every Blender person should know just for their own ease of life, and don't worry, they are very, very easy. The first one is the delete button. To practice this, go ahead and go to your hierarchy on the right hand side by default. Click on your camera, and if you hold shift while clicking, you can go ahead and select everything in a row like you're selecting things in Unity. If you hold control, you can skip items just like that. In this case, we want to select everything. So just left click while holding shift to select everything. Go into your main scene here, press the letter X. That brings up this little OK box that says delete. We're just going to delete these objects. Then you have an empty scene. So, like we have an empty scene, how do we get a model in here? How do we get stuff fitted? What are we doing? So, I'm glad you asked. When it comes to getting a model into Blender, there's a few different ways. I'm going to teach you how to first import an FBX file, and then we're just going to work straight from a blend file. So I have a new model here that I just went ahead and purchased. This is going to be the Aspil model. When you load up a project in Unity, because a lot of you are familiar with Unity, you're going to see a whole bunch of folders here. However, there's always a folder called FBX. Open up that FBX folder, and what you want to do is go ahead and just hit Show Original. Let's go and pull this Aspil, or in this case, whatever model FBX you have. I recommend actually creating a copy of this file and starting a whole new folder. This whole new folder is going to be whatever you want it to be. I happen to name mine Blender Projects, and then I'll just go ahead and paste that in here. Aspil _1 FBX. To actually import this model, we're going to go to our file, we're going to go to import, go down to FBX. Once here, go ahead and locate your folder. You can see here, this is my Aspil folder. When importing a model, I recommend that you do not import the leaf bones. Leaf bones are basically extra bones that get added during the import or export process that have no value being tied to any of the mesh. So they're basically just extra bones that don't do anything. In order to turn those off, in order to make sure that you don't import those, before you import, just go down to armature here, click ignore leaf bones, you can click import. That, as you see, will then import your model. But there is another way. Let's say, for example, that we have a project, and this project is a .blend file project. Well, then we don't need to actually even import an FBX. What we can do is just go to blend projects, and we can go to, in this case, the Aspil Blender, and you'll get a project that looks like this. Now in this case, you can see that the model's all pink, but don't worry, we will be fixing that. For now, we're just gonna go over to this little shading button. We're gonna turn off the see-through pass-through mode. Up here, these are your different shader levels. This is your wireframe. This is just your basically gray blobs. This will actually house your shading, and this last one is for rendering. Most of you will be working either in this mode and or in this mode. If your model is passed through like this, where you can kind of see translucently through your model, just double click this little box up here next to your shader icons. Now, a good habit to get into is making sure that we have our bones visible. In order to see our bones, you want to go ahead and click on armature, go down to viewport display. First, make sure this is octahedral. Some people will see a blend file that looks like this, with sticks. If your blend file has sticks like that, just change it from wire to octahedral. See, there's the sticks, they look like that. Just change it to octahedral. Some people prefer the stick method, and some people think it looks cleaner and easier to read. I personally work in octahedral mode, as it helps me understand how the weights are being distributed better. If you don't see your bones peeking through your body like how you just saw, go and click in front, and now you have our bones in front. This will be helpful later. Alrighty. So, congratulations, you now have your model inside of Blender. And now the question is, well, how do we get clothing on it? How do we do all these cool things that you see me do with my models? I'm glad you asked, and it's a wonderful question. So, first thing I do, I always hide my armature here. Next thing I do is I like to go into here and I like to set up my shaders. Most people that have a project that they're pulling from can go ahead and go into their Unity project, go into their material section, go into textures, and they'll find their textures here. What you can do is, if you're showing this up in the Unity project, you can actually just leave them in that Unity project. You don't even need to transfer them out. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, so I have that pulled up. So we're going to go ahead and click on body to highlight the body mesh, and we don't need to see any of this stuff down here right now. What we're going to do is we're going to go to materials, which is this little circle all the way down here. To see your materials, you'll actually see this little section right here. There's the body, the eyes, and what looks like a specular map. To actually apply these textures, we're going to go up to this tab up here called shading. And you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, what the heck is going on? I don't understand any of this. So let me go ahead and kind of break this down. This is considered a node path. And there's a few different ways that you can get this done. You can see here that they have a few complex things, but just for the simplicity and ease, we're going to go ahead and reset this. I just delete that, re-add a principal shader, BSD, there we go. So I can kind of better explain this when we actually have color present. There we go. And okay, so that did not fix it. So no worries. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and delete all of it. X again still is a good delete button. In order to create a shader or create something that will work, we have two different options available to us. You can either go ahead and go down and add a new one, or in this case, we know we need a material output and a principal BSDF. So we're just gonna go ahead and delete all this. In order to pull up this menu, go ahead and right click. We're going to want to make sure we set an output and do material output. That's the first thing we want. Next thing, once we deselect this, because you can see how here it's selected in the white outline, so deselect it by left clicking, right click again, go down to shader, principal BSDF. We're going to connect the node of BSDF to surface. And now all of a sudden we have a white body texture. So we've now fixed the shader issue, and now we want to go ahead and get our texture on there. So in this case, see, here's the base body texture. We can literally just drag and drop. That's simple. In this case, we can go ahead and plug this into color, and you can see now we have a colored model. You can mess with the values here to make things look shinier or not shinier. You can see here if you turn on the roughness, you get a lot more shiny. Turn up the metallic, you get more of that reflectiveness. You turn up the roughness, it's a more soft shaded body, so on and so forth. There's a few other things here that you'll notice because there's a few other nodes here that we can go ahead and select. There is normal maps, and it looks like this is a smoothness, this is an ambient occlusion. In this case, we want to go ahead and just probably do just the normals. So I'm going to drag the normals from that folder you saw me just drag. And then what we're going to do is, because we can't just plug this straight into normal. Even though this is the normal map, we can't plug it into the normal node over here. So what we're going to do, go ahead and click add. We're going to do input. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find, is it an input or is it an output? There it is, it's under vector. Go ahead and do normal map. This spawns this little normal map thing. Simple, just drag the node from color to color to normal. Boom, now we have normal maps on our avatar. Nice and easy. You can see that my eyes, unfortunately, are still not working. You can see here how this is probably contributing to some of the issues. We have emissions, base colors, normal maps. Okay. So I'm gonna just go ahead and reset this because that way I can go ahead and correct this issue here. So again, output, material output, deselect, add, go to shader, print, go to shader. Things want to work with me. Principal BSDF. Drag the output, boom. Now we can go ahead and drag those eye textures. So we can see here how this is the eye base color. These are the emissions. We don't have a normal map, so we don't need a normal map. Simple as that. So just drag this to base color. And then we can just drag this to emission. And we can even up the emission strength by just dragging this little bar down here. And that's how you get emissions working. So wonderful. We now have a model of textures. If you go back into your layout mode, you'll see that this is how it looks. You can see here that this requires some ambient occlusion in order to get this looking a lot better. Not all models do this. That's probably why they had the mixed shader beforehand. You can dive into shaders more. That was just a very simple basic tutorial on how to set up a shader. So moving onward, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to fit clothing. I'm going to do something really super simple just because I know how to fit this clothing really fast, and it's a good tutorial. So most clothing comes in an FBX format, so just like I showed you previously how to import a model via an FBX, we're doing the exact same method here. No different, it's just you're selecting a different thing. In this case, I am going to go ahead and be importing some cargo pants. that you see my characters using all the time. And what you'll see here is that the cargo pants have now been imported. However, you'll see how the model here does not appear to line up, which that's okay. First thing we're going to want to do is, let's say you have it completely deselected like this. Just select armature over here, press the letter G, and press S. What that does is that allows you to then resize and scale this. I personally try and scale things to where they look good on the avatar. Sometimes that lines up with the actual body line, so in this case, yeah, I probably want them sitting about there. That looks good. So once you've imported some stuff here, it's very important stuff we want to do, and this basically just makes sure that like anything that we do is set to a certain point. So we're gonna hit A to select everything, then while holding Control, press A again, and click all transforms. Basically, this just sets all the data to be equal, so that way we're not working with unequal values. Next thing that I recommend is most mesh or most clothing will come with extra armature that you just do not need. In order to delete this extra armature, we're just going to go ahead and click on the bones. Hit tab to enter edit mode. That box select that I remember or talked about beforehand comes in perfect here. In this case, we can just delete all of the arms. You can hold shift to select multiple different things like you were over here. X to delete bones. Now, the pants are down here, so we don't need a head bone. We also don't need a chest bone. And whatever that little bone is there, we also don't need. We do, however, need our spine bone, since that is fairly close to the mesh, and some hip bones. So, nice and easy. Now, some people will end up with a model that is either in an A pose, or the knees might be slightly bent, and so you want to try and fit this as close as you can. In this case, you can see here how the legs here actually go a little bit slightly back because we are working on a digigrade model, or I should say slightly digigrade model. In order to correct this, what we're going to do, let me just delete these bones real quick first though, we don't need these either. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pose these bones. However, there we go. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and go down to my little running man down here. Viewport display, in front. So now I see all the bones. I'm going to unhide my body here. And again, just like in Unity, your hide and unhides are the exact same. Don't worry about the camera next to it. The camera has to do with rendering. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select the armature. In the top left, go from object to pose mode. In order to move things equally, because you can see here how I can move just one leg, but in order to move both, go ahead and click this little butterfly X up here. I recommend grabbing your actual tool instead of pressing R. You can press R, but R will rotate the bone relative to the camera that or the way that you're viewing everything. In order to actually rotate properly, go ahead and click this little button, click your bone, you can rotate it back like that. I'm probably going to rotate this back a little bit too, just so it's a little bit more aligned. Go ahead and rotate these a little bit like that. In this case, I can see that the leg is also a little bit in, so I can actually kind of kick that out a little bit, and you just want to get it as close as you can. The reason why is because the less pulling and editing of the mesh that you can do, the better. And the reason why that is better is because that way you're not stretching your normal maps as much. Because keep in mind, when you're editing this mesh, you are going to be stretching your normals. So you want to try and reduce the stretching as much as possible. So cool. Just like that, we've now posed the mesh. Now, before we go any further though, don't get too excited. We still have a few more things to do. In order to actually set this as our rest pose, because if you notice, if I go into edit mode, see how it snaps forward there? That means we have some work to do. So, in order to actually set this correctly, what we're going to do is I'm going to hide the body. We are going to select the actual mesh of the pants. You can do that either by clicking the mesh here or by selecting it here in the hierarchy. To apply this rest pose, first thing we're going to do is go to Object. We are going to go to... Also, anytime you want to do something, just Alt Transform. Actually, I recommend Alt-A, Alt Transforming right now if you haven't done that already. But now that we have this, select your mesh, go down to Apply. You can also do the Alt Transform here. But in this case, what we're going to do is Visual Geometry to Mesh. We click this, and then what that does is then boom. So now this is Visual Geometry to Mesh. Next thing we're going to do is click on the actual armature, go back into pose mode. Go ahead and hit A to select all the armature. That's very important. Make sure you do hit A to select all the armature. Go into Apply, Apply as Rest Pose. Now there is one more step. Exit Pose mode, go back to Object mode. Click the Mesh and then the Armature. And then what we're going to do is go to Parent after right clicking. So we want to right click, go to Parent, Merge with Empty Groups under Armature Deform. That's the last step. So now, if we go into pose mode and edit mode, you'll see here how that is staying. So that means that we have successfully applied the new pose. You can see here, it all still works. If you have moved your body in a certain way and like you don't want to like undo everything, just hit Control R. Control R will reset the pose back to its default instead of hitting the undo button. So we have now successfully set the armature's pose. What do we do from here? So a few different things that I recommend doing first. Always click on your body's mesh, the actual base model. Go to a tab here called Shape Keys. This is a tab that is wonderful to look through. If you haven't ever looked through a shape key menu before, this is how you get your like model to, you know, move its mouth and how to like, you know, for example, hide shoulder fluff and stuff, right? So in this case, I always look for like a female variant or some sort of female blend shapes. In this case, it looks like we have just chests, thighs, larger hips, and so on. So, with that being said, I want to go ahead and see if there's just an all-around female shape, because sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Also, if you ever see any of these Japanese blend shapes here, those are going to be for your MMD blend shapes. For those of you that like MMD worlds. Okay, so in this case it does not appear that we have any actual female blend shapes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of play with the blend shapes until I like a certain variant of what I am going for here. If we do that, so boom, it's more of a femme shape now. So what we can do, now that I have a shape with a body that I like, we can start actually meshing and pulling and stretching these pants. To do that, go ahead and click on the armature, not the armature, the mesh of the pants here. So they're highlighted. Go up to object mode, and go to sculpt mode. Now personally, the tools that I use are basically 99% of the time this elastic deform tool. And you'll see why. You need quite a bit with this. So, first thing I recommend is setting your radius to about like 95 pixels. And the reason as to why is because if you start changing that size, it's going to cause a little bit of inconsistency. Next thing I do is if your mesh is fairly symmetrical, you can go ahead and turn on the X modifier here, so you can see here how when I highlight over an area, there's a mirrored version of that. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out here, and I'm going to go ahead and start pulling this mesh. In order to pull it, you just click with your left mouse button and drag. You can see here how it moves. Now, the only way to get good at sculpting is to sculpt. And there is no way around that. There is no cheat code for that. The more time you spend in Blender sculpting things to objects, the better you will get. And then in order to kind of change the radius, zoom in. Zoom into the portion that you're going to want to be editing instead of changing your size all the time. So you can see here how when I'm pulling this mesh, I'm clicking in a lot of different places. And I'm just kind of slowly pulling this out in a whole bunch of different places. I'm trying to keep things even and symmetrical if I can. And you can see here that the more and more you pull this mesh, the more and more it comes out of the body. Now in this case, because I know that there's a high hip fluff, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and exit object mode, go back to here, and because I don't really want the hip fluff, I'm going to go ahead and hide that now, wherever that hip fluff was. There it is. Go back now to sculpting. What I can do is I can continue to pull this out. And notice my radius has never changed. I've just been zooming in and out this whole time. Don't be afraid to get weird and uncomfortable angles, because the way you push and pull this mesh determines how close you can get it to the body. And the closer you get it to the body, the better it's going to look. But you don't want it too close, because if you get it too close, that can cause issues with weight painting. So in this case, I need to move more of this front section. So I'm going to zoom out so I can move more of that front section at once. You can see here I'm checking all of these angles here. I'm trying to see where I have a gap at this hip line here. So I went ahead and I've kind of more or less done what I want there. I can see there's a little bit of mesh deforming here, so I can kind of try and straighten this little back out. Maybe make that look just a little bit better. Maybe try and get this little portion of the bag pushed in a bit, so that it looks just a bit better. So awesome. So now there's also some more fluff down here I don't want. So just click on the body again. In this case, we have some calf fluff and some ankle fluff. And then we can go ahead and hide those. Now, in this specific case, I'm going to enter edit mode by pressing tab, and I'm going to change my view here from plane to individual vertexes. Because there's this portion of this mesh here that I don't want. You can see it's sticking through right here and right here, right? In this case, since I don't want it, I'm going to highlight these by hitting L. Just drag your cursor over the section that you want to highlight and hit L. Just like deleting bones, just press X and delete vertices. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and look at the bottom of these pants and see that they're actually fairly good. I don't need to change too much about them, which is fantastic. So I can go back into object mode here, go into sculpt, and I can go ahead and start pulling this bottom section out now. There we go. Now, I can see that personally for me, I can probably pull this little corner out here, pull that out there, and just like that, we now have some pants that are pretty much fitted to this model. Go around, check every single seam. You can see some skin poking through there. So what I can do is I can go ahead and drag that out like that. Cool. All right. So now we have our pants fitted around our body. However, they're not weight painted to the body. So that's the next step. But before we get to that, we want to go ahead and do one more thing. So we don't need a lot of this armature. We only needed it for posing. So what we can do, highlight the armature after re-showing it, hit tab, and we can delete all these major bones. By major bones, I mean like the hips, spine, legs, and thighs. However, you're gonna notice we're gonna keep all these little tiny small bones because those have weights. Those are tied to the tassels, right? So what we can do, we can delete those. After we deleted them, hit A, Alt transform again. Just get in the habit of doing that. So, my next personal favorite thing to do is click on the mesh of the pants, go to vertex groups, and then here's where weight painting can seem daunting, and it's really not that daunting. We know what parts we got rid of. We don't need the hips, spine, legs, ankles, anything. However, these drawstrings we know that we need. You can hold shift while dragging over these little lock buttons to lock certain vertex groups here. Which, by the way, vertex groups are basically just the way that the weights are calculated. So you can hold shift, just drag that, and we're going to lock all these. You can see how we have some of these left unlocked, and there's a reason for that. What we're going to do, once you've locked your vertex groups that you want to keep, and then again, in this case, I'm locking all the drawstrings and everything, because I want to keep those weights. I'm going to go ahead and hit the down arrow here and delete all unlocked groups. So now, that's just our drawstrings. That's all it is. So now comes the fun part. What we can do here is we're going to click the body, click the mesh by holding shift. So see how the body changes color. So click the body so it's this light orange. While holding shift, left click the mesh. Body turns this dark orange, now the mesh is light orange. We're going to go to object mode, go down to weight paint, go to weights, go to transfer weights. Make sure this top one is set to vertex groups, nearest vertex, and then the source layer to by name. Okay, so now we've transferred the weights from the body to the pants, but the pants aren't still going to move. So what I personally do, and this is super duper fun to do in my personal opinion, enter weight paint mode. You're going to see blue. A lot of people see blue and they get really confused. A recent thing that I have learned that helps me understand what does and doesn't have weights, go to this little barbell next to your little double box next to this little thing up here and go to active. Because what happens when you see an active weight, this is the beauty of this mode, you can see that it shows what the weight is active. And in this case, we can see here, active is our hip. So we're going to lock our hip. We're going to lock our spine. See here, none of the weights from the chest transfers, so we don't need to do any of that. If there's anything above the chest, we don't need to as well. So it's the neck, head, jaw, tongue, eyes, ears, arms we probably don't need just to make sure. Nope. Don't need any of the breastbones. Ah, upper leg. Wonderful. That we will need. So too with the lower leg. And check the foot as well just to be sure. Since none of the foot is down there. Now, some avatars and some clothing, you may want to actually have the tail move with the outfit. In this case, I don't want the tail to move, or the outfit to move when the tail moves. So I am actually not going to select the tail's weight painting. I'm going to intentionally leave that blank. Make sure to check your butt and your butt constraints, because you can always get some more weight paints out of those. We have specifically some knee stuff here. We have some fluff. I know we probably don't need any fluff. So now we've gone through this, we can delete all unlocked groups. That just minimizes how much we're going to have to do here. So we know that we don't need to touch any of the drawstrings because we kept those weights from the original, right? So we're going to start on hips. I recommend dragging your radius all the way up and clicking the little blur tool here. Click this front little pose here to get center on and unlock the hip now. Do this without the X modifier on, and there's a reason why, because the X modifier can do some weird stuff. Apologies while I take some sips of coffee. What we're gonna do is hover over your pants, over the weight painted area, and click 3 to 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. See here, it blended out. Now we have a little bit of stuff back here. Probably needs to get a little bit more blended, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see here how now all that is nicely blended. We can click on the spine and zoom in a little bit. 1, 2, oh, make sure we unlock first. 1, 2, 3. Go back, we're good. Upper leg. 1, 2, 3. And click 2 more times there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Knee weight paints, interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. So, what we want to do now that we've weight painted this, is we're going to go ahead and attach this to the armature. To attach this to the armature of the model, super duper simple. Unhide your armature is the first step. Next step, click your pants, the mesh of the pants. Then select the armature by holding Control. It's really easy. And then go up to here, click Join. No, sorry, not Join. Click Parent with empty groups. Now what we can do is we can drag this up to there. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and click our armature here. Now click our armature here, and then click Join. And then, now that we've joined this, we have a little bit of extra stuff to do. To continue, we want to go ahead and actually attach our bones that we kept from the previous over to our new stuff. So highlight the bone here, highlight, in this case, the hips, because we want to attach those to the hips. Parent, make, keep offset. You just got to do this for every single bone chain that you kept, every single thing that has weights that you kept. In this case, I know that all of this all goes to my shin. So I can do this, parent, make, keep offset. And you can see how all 4 of those went to the shin. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Click that, parent, make, keep offset. We have some down here. We want to select 1, 2, and 1, 2. Oopsies, hold on. Parent, make, keep offset. 1, 2. This parent, make, keep offset. Cool. So now we've reattached all of our bones properly. So now what we can do, we can go into our pose mode, and now we can check our weights. Nice. Look at that. We now have weight painted clothing. The more and more you do this, the more and more you'll end up getting a lot better at this too. So don't fret if things look wonky or weird the first time. Just definitely play around with this and you'll get better in time. But yeah, obviously there's a few weights here that I can clean up. Like for example, I don't want these tassels here to be weighted to anything, right? Anything but what they're already currently weighted to. Whoopsies. You can go ahead and reset our pose here. There we go. So, to remove weights, it's really super simple. Go ahead and, oh, I have a small little sculpting issue. Also, changing your radius affects it for everything, so do keep that in mind. But to change the weight painting, we're going to go back into weight painting mode, and we are going to find where these are tied to. I have a pretty good idea that one of these are tied to the hips, and that's fine. We want those tied to the hips. It's probably okay that they're tied to the spine, however, it's not okay that they're tied to these legs. So we're going to hit tab to enter edit mode. Because these are single pieces of mesh, I can go ahead and just hit L on these, highlight them, scroll down underneath the vertex menu, click weight, all the way down to 0, click assign. Hit untab, boom. All of a sudden, they're unselected. I can go through here and just do this, assign, assign, and I'm just entering tab mode and unhitting tab to fix those. So now when I go back into here, and I go back into pose mode, you'll notice that those tassels now don't move. Everything else moves, but the tassels don't. Cool. Hit Alt-R, there we go. So, you've successfully added clothes to your model, you like how it looks, you got the weights looking good, you're happy. How do you get this out of Blender into Unity? Super duper simple. Just go to File, Export, FBX. Name this however you want to. Some models have very specific export settings. You might need to play around with them in order to get them to translate properly. One thing I always suggest though, unclick Add Leaf Bones. I always recommend that, and then you can export. When you export that, you just drag this into your Unity project here, and you always want to select this and go to Rig. Always set it to Humanoid. You always want to configure this, by the way. Make sure you always set your chest bone, and then go to your head and make sure that you unselect your jawbone. Yeah, it's that simple. I hope that this helps a little bit. I know Blender's confusing. I know this is kind of a rush tutorial, but I did go over everything that could pop up in your day-to-day operations of Blender. There are functions like using renders and so on and so forth. If you do want to go ahead and create a render project, there's a few different things you're going to want to do. For example, this is my Tiger Bee render project. And you can see here how, everything is set up. You have all the textures here. But yeah, and you can see here how the shading nodes, everything works. You have like your necklace, I have my body here. You see how the nodes can get a little bit complicated sometimes, but once you get them working, you can get them working nice and fine. So yeah, other than that, again, if you do have any questions, please reach out to me. I know this was a rush tutorial, but I do thank you all for watching, and ababa, have yourselves a good day.